If you have a young horse who has just been started, or you're going to have one started soon, or perhaps you're contemplating starting it yourself, there are sometimes issues that can crop up once they have been trained initially. This week, we're going to look into two common problem areas with young, newly started horses, ones that get a fright and ones that are sensitive to the girth area. We'll go through the reasons behind some of these issues and what you can do to fix them. This is Mark Langley's Horsemanship podcast, a podcast helping you to find solutions in a positive, connected approach. I'm Jenny Langley, and with me is Mark Langley.
G'day.
Mark, before we start, can you just go through how many horses you've actually started yourself?
When I was full-time starting over a period of 15 years, I started sort of well over 1,000, and then in the last 10 years, I'd slowed down that process, and I haven't really counted how many I've started from the last 10 years.
So obviously, a huge number of horses being started in that period of time. So your overview of sort of understanding the process and how you can shape that process to be a really good one and avoid some of these pitfalls is the key here, which is what we're going to dive into so that we can help everyone listening out there. First question that has come through today from one of our online members, Mark, is from Beck in Australia. So she has a young horse, a 3-year-old, that she's just literally come back from the trainers. I'm going to describe the scenario because there's a few things in what's happened with this particular horse that I think you can help with. So this 3-year-old went away very bold, and the trainer said, this might be a little bit of an issue because he's got a short attention span as well. Beck has done a lot of groundwork with him. The groundwork didn't include a flag, and we know Beck's been sort of following your training for a while now. So this little horse has come back very reactive, both on the ground and under the saddle. Beck knows the trainer would sort of do things, and she was quite comfortable with his methods. That's why she used him, and she sort of believed that he was quite a fair trainer, didn't punish and didn't expect horses to put up a fight either. But what's happened is that her little horse has turned into one that can get a fright. So maybe from a car or another horse or lawnmower. And when he gets that fright, he'll run forward. Then he'll give himself a fright, and then he'll forget he's got a rider on his back, and then he'll fright himself when he remembers that. He hasn't got into trouble for shying, and he's never bucked. He just runs and destinates, but he's still quite soft when he does it. He's just that initial explosion. She's also noticed that when she saddles him, which she used to be able to do quite well, he used to just stand there and look around and sniff. Now, when he's getting saddled, there's a fair sort of bit of movement, and she's just not quite sure if that's to do with his focus now changing from what's happening on the outside to what's happening sort of a bit closer to him and around his body. So she'd like to know specifically, Mark, from you, what she could start to do, from the groundwork with the basics and follow it through so that she can start riding him a bit safely under saddle. The trainer has suggested giving him a few months off to let him mature, so he doesn't need a lot of training at the moment. He hasn't had any spurs, and the trainer has worked on slowing him and calming him. The trainer also said he's quite smart, so he will pick up things quite quickly, whether they're good or bad. So there's a few comments in there, Mark, that I think we can sort of work through. I just want to go first of all to the comment that trainer made that he's got quite a short attention span, and this idea that his attention might be flicking quite a lot from what's happening further away to what's happening immediately on his body, and he might not be able to cope with both. Can you just talk us through just a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, I'm just not long finished some clinics in Mudgee, and there was one particular stock horse that came that the owner wants to start, and he was bought from a place that apparently produced fairly good-minded stock horses, but this fella has what you would call a short attention span, but it's more very easily distracted, and the mind's bouncing all over the place, the picture that I've got from Beck is, I'm pretty sure by the sounds of the way the horse has coped with the starting process, she's probably got a very similar horse, and I see them a lot. So basically, I call them, some people laugh when I go, I think your horse has got chicken thoughts. And they go, what's chicken thoughts? And it's like, well, imagine thoughts that are going like chickens catching bugs or something like that. They're going, book, 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 like that. So they're constantly distracted by all these little things going from one thing to the other. What are the horses doing over there? There's something over there. And they're very easily as I say, you very hard to get centered because they everything's kind of bothering them, and it comes from an instability in the horse. Like I find a lot of those horses that have, chicken thoughts, anxious, and they're not very grounded horses. And this particular horse I'm talking about has blemishes all over him, and I said to the owner, I said, he's still got blemishes. A horse with blemishes, may be hard for the other horses to change his thought because he's still coming and getting bitten. And so how does this relate to Beck's horse? Well, we did 2 clinics with this particular horse, and the whole time, though he improved his leading and a whole bunch, like we mainly worked on leading, but the most important thing that we worked on the whole time is for him to be centered and understand his responsibility and have clear boundaries. And, the first, I think, maybe 5 sessions, we were just sort of saying, let go of that thought, be aware of this boundary, let go of that thought, be aware of this boundary, be centered, until he started to self-manage and process a lot better. And I said to her, and this is what I'm relaying through for Beck's horses, for this particular owner, I said, you must have this horse very centered before you start to do a lot of things with it, like introduce saddles and everything to this horse, because you don't want to be managing everything. The horse has to manage itself and understand one thing at a time. So what I mean by that is you have to teach something to a horse till they own it and they're responsible for it, which means they understand it. It could be simply leading quietly and standing with the rope when it's quiet, moving the thoughts and the feet with the rope when the rope's moving, and then standing again with the rope when it's quiet and having that quiet mind. And if she had to work on that for 2 weeks before she starts that horse with that particular horse, I think it will be time well spent, because at the end of the clinic, she worked him on a mounting block, and probably for a half an hour session, he could go out on a long line, come back, stand, stop, walk very softly, and he was in that space for half an hour without her having to sort of say, hey, let go of that thought, hey, let go of that thought. So basically he was starting to find a nice present place. And horses like him, and I've met other horses, another horse in Queensland, which it came back from a starter, but this horse started to sort of not process pressure very well, would start to shut down a bit. And we worked on it learning to search under pressure and also be very centered for a couple of clinics. And then at the end of the second clinic, she got to ride it again, and she said, well, that's the best ride I've ever had on this horse, because when I rode it just after the trainer, it wouldn't move. It was sticky. It was kind of lost. But all we worked on was very good mindset and being very present and learning how to search under pressure and make good decisions and understand clear boundaries. And doing that established such a good mindset that when she rode, the horse was just carried itself with a really soft mind. So this stuff is really important for horses. And when they're trained with chicken thoughts and it's not corrected, they can be an overexposure of pressure, and then they get worried and because their mind can be so scattered, they're not processing and understanding every single thing that we're teaching them. So they're not really remembering it. So it's kind of like almost overexposure, and they get a bit flooded with all this information, and that makes them more spooky, more reactive, and unsure of themselves. And then they start to, and those horses that are bouncing around with their thoughts all the time, the environmental stress that they get can really load them up too. So it's a big thing, but it can be fixed as long as you really focus on that area of being very centered.
So for this particular horse who left being quite a bold, forward-going horse, and she didn't have any issues with him, done a lot of groundwork with him, and now he's come back to a horse that gets a fright both on the ground and under saddle, and quite reactive. So that's all to do with his chicken thoughts.
Yes. Yeah, so I think he just was seemingly immature. But I meet a lot of horses now, and people say the horse is immature, we should spell it until it's a bit older, and then it'll be more mature. And that can happen. But a horse that, like this young stock horse that I'm talking about, we sort of educated him to be mature, not waited till he grows up, because his environment, his weaning, a whole bunch of things, life experience in the horse had caused him to be like he is. Maybe genetics, but I think more it was the whole process of life can make a mature horse or an immature horse. So basically, if maturity has got a lot to do with life experience, then how we train our horses or how we help them makes them mature, not time off. Because time off, they can just stay in the same mindset and not improve at all, and they come back in the same.
Okay, so to help this particular horse then, so that he's getting a fright, he's running forward, and particularly at objects, it seems, when the car or a horse or a lawnmower comes through. If he's got a rider on, it's even worse. It's almost like a second shock that he gets running forward. Check, there's a rider. Oh my goodness, where did that come from? That's frightened me as well. How can Beck help solve this? And how have you avoided this scenario happening when you train a horse so that they don't get a fright with a rider on their back?
Well, first of all, work on having centered thoughts. So, maybe do some very simple lessons with him where he has to be present. So, if he glances off into the distance, you might interrupt him. But when you interrupt a horse, and there's a video that we've just put on, I think last month, about being able to direct the thought away and then draw it back again. So it's very important when you're standing quietly with him. If he looks over your head, then you might get up and say, put those thoughts back into yourself. If he glances away over there, then you might draw his thoughts back to the place that he is, so let go of that thought. But don't always draw him back to you, sort of thing. Maybe just get him to kind of let go of a thought over there. Or if the whole thought comes through you, you block that and say, push that thought away a little bit until he's kind of standing grounded. Now, just leading and getting him to stand ground tied with the lead rope and being present is really important until he, as I said before, he owns that, he understands it, and it's not you having to keep an eye on saying, come on, mate. If you're still distracting your horse in 2 weeks' time because they're constantly bouncing around, then you're managing your horse's focus, and by then they should be managing it. They should be better at it. So you got to be really clear and structured and do it really well for those so many lessons, and don't branch off too much until your horse is understanding in your space and around you. It's a quiet space, and I have a quiet mind, and work on that quiet mind and just really imprint that on your horse. Then once you've got the quiet mind, I believe that all the missing things that probably happened through the training where the horse didn't actually process well enough having people down his sides behind him, operating him from behind. So as soon as he's quiet, and when you lead him by and you work from the back of his eyes, you can really find out if he's over-focused on you like this and he kind of doesn't want to look away. So what I mean is, like, you might be standing at his wither and on one side, and if he's constantly wanting to draw his focus to you all the time, it means that he's just kind of hyper-focusing on you. So, I'd really look at maybe getting him from both sides is to sort of press behind his eye a little bit and get his eye to roll away and look away, and then draw him back again. So he's looking away and coming back softly on both eyes when you're just standing where the saddle would be, and see how he copes with it. Also at a walk, if you're walking beside the saddle, you do that as well. You just kind of walk beside him and see if he'll look away from you and then come back to you while he's moving. And if he wants to spin around and face up or get the other eye on or change positions all the time, then that's why he's having trouble carrying a rider. And then when he's got to over-focus on something out there, then he's got to over-focus on the person. It becomes this big kind of conflict. So, really work on just looking at how he's operating down both eyes, and I reckon you might find some holes there. So that's where you come back into long reining and flipping eyes in the long reining and stuff, making sure he's always thinking, put the right eye on, the left eye on, long rein with two eyes, on, and just keep moving him around softly until he's been in all positions and there's not one position that he's frightened of.
So it's not a case of riding him and spending a lot of time on his back so that he gets used to you up there? No,
I think I'd go back to finding some of the holes on the ground. And like I remember a year or so ago, I started riding Marvel. I thought, I didn't have a lot of time, so I started riding him out with the kids actually, and after a couple of rides I was getting really stressed, and I thought I've got to go back and find out if there's something I missed. Sure enough, in the long reins I found a real spot on one side because he wasn't steering very good to the right, and I thought, I might just fix it under saddle. But then I went back, she had a bit of trouble, so I actually went back to the long reins and really found that spot where he's really having trouble. And I did a couple of sessions in the long reins just rolling that eye around and moving his body around and changing positions, and then I got on him straight after that. And then all of a sudden he softened up in that right rein and travelled really nice through the right rein, just because I fixed a bit of eye anxiety, because that's the window to the brain, and how they process us there is really important. And that really helped him. So you can get a lot done on the ground, and you can see a lot and adjust things and be more dynamic until they're really confident. Then you get back on them while they're in that nice mindset.
Okay, let's move on to another area then of a horse that's just been started. This question comes from Lizzie, who has a Clydesdale Cross stock horse mare who's 9 or 10 years old, and she's restarting her after having 5 to 6 years off. And what she's found is that she can become very sensitive and tight when she girths her up. She's noticed that she's relaxed and happy when she sits on her bareback. She's fine with the saddle, but once she starts to tighten the girth, she becomes tight, doesn't want to move forward, and is almost proppy. Now, she was previously broken in many, many years ago. We're not quite sure what happened. She's also doesn't believe there's any pain there. She's not sure if there's sensitivity or whether this could be related to a past trauma. She just wants to make sure that this is a positive process and that she's comfortable under saddle. So she'd like to know what your advice might be in just getting over this little area.
Yeah, it's actually funny enough. I mean, a lot of horses have been started for quite a lot of years that still have that kind of half freeze tension with the girth, sucking back, still a bit crow hoppy. Yeah. And the funny thing is one area that doesn't get educated enough. And I'll be honest, like I started a lot of horses and I used to put a belly rope on them, but nowadays I'm I really use the belly rope to get the horses to really control the pressure into a real soft mindset. And that's been like a game changer for so many girthy or, any horses that have got any rib cage trouble from leg age to girth and stuff like that. So when you put a belly rope on a horse, and I'd suggest, if you presented me with that horse right now, I'd just go and get my long belly rope. I'll put the belly rope on and teach it how to lead. So leading, and I think Tom Dorrance said once upon a time, one of his sayings was there shouldn't be anywhere that you can't put a rope on a horse and have it lead softly, and whether that's the exact words, but that's basically the saying that he had, and he's correct. So you think about when a horse doesn't understand pressure, it's confused. And our job is to get a horse to find an alternative. So if it's doing something that is desirable, then we sort of say, well, instead of not doing that, what's something you can do that's desirable? So when it comes to leading and fixing the rib cage, when a horse tightens up, it doesn't know what to do with that pressure, so it goes into some form of freeze, and then that freeze could unlock later into a buck or something like a jumper fright, or just sucking back and not knowing what to do. And because it's a girth, you can't actually, once it's done up tight, it just stays tight, so the horse eventually kind of dulls to the fact that it's on and eventually gets over it. But if the horse can control the girth pressure for so many lessons, it starts to trust the girth pressure, so you can just girth up and there's no problems. So what you do is you put the belly rope on, you take a feel on the horse and take it forward. So you're taking that belly rope forward past the horse's shoulder, so you're way out in front of the horse or something, and you pull forward so the horse can feel a forward pressure, like you want it to lead forward, like a pole pressure that you want them to lead forward to. So if the horse is just dulling out, really going, oh, la, 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 and just tightening up, I might put a bump through the belly rope and it'll put a little shock in it, and then I'll just disappear with the belly rope, reduce the pressure. And then I'll pick up the feel quietly again. And then if the horse goes into freeze and just stays in freeze, nothing happens, I might put another bump through the belly rope, and then you'll see it shock a little bit and go, what was that? And then you just back it off and take the pressure off, and then you start quietly again. And what you'll see is the horse start to blink and start to search, and maybe the muscles start to loosen because it's starting to process that something's happening, and I might want to do something about that. Some horses, sometimes they step back. And if they step back, well, I just hold and they'll step back into increasing pressure, and then they might wiggle a bit and step forward, and then the pressure reduces a bit. So you're not teaching the horse that I touch you with the belly rope, you move forward and I release. We're not trying to teach horses, and this is where I think a lot of horses stay stressed in pressure because people kind of always release the pressure. Whereas if you want a horse to be in control of the pressure, they control the amount of pressure on the rib cage. In this instance, it's going to be rib cage. So when your horse wiggles and wobbles, it'll create pressure, reduce pressure, create pressure, reduce pressure, or increase, decrease. And then all of a sudden, it'll kind of take some steps forward, and it might decrease the pressure all the way to nothing. And then eventually, as you pick up on that feel, the horse will search and just walk forward softly and start to breathe and relax and go, oh, this pressure's making me think forward, and I feel good about this pressure because I can understand it, because I can control it. And then after controlling that pressure, and the horse starts to trust that pressure, then I'll put them in a position where I lead them up past me a little bit, and then when they're beside me, where I girth up, I'll just put my hand on the wither, ground myself, and change the angle of the belly rope so it becomes like a full compression with no forward or backward direction. And then that's the girthing pressure. And I might just go up slowly with it. And when I see the horse kind of blinking like this and loosening a little bit when I'm doing the girth simulation, then I just loosen up a bit and say, oh, thanks for being soft. And then I just slowly increase and decrease that until I can get the girth to full girth pressure and the horse is not frozen. Okay, and usually after a couple of days of leading them in a belly rope and getting them very comfortable with that, you'll find that girthing problem can dissipate pretty quickly.
Because it's not just a case of putting a rope on and seeing them stand there with it calmly. You've actually got to get that movement as well, haven't you? As well as all the leading and the right mindset and the right pressure.
Yeah, that's right. And there's a lot of horses that have been shut down in the rib cage just because of saddling. So when the rider goes to squeeze them, they just go, no, I don't move. And then people go to sticks. And I'm like, well, the horses had to endure that girthing pressure, which when you think about it, it's quite a lot of pressure around the rib cage to hold that saddle on. And they've shut out to that girth pressure. So because they've shut out to the girth pressure, they're shutting out to leg pressure. When you first girth them, you teach them to process pressure, adjust pressure by controlling it, and then understand that this neutral pressure doesn't mean anything, which is that tight girth pressure. But then they still know what active pressure means and inactive girth pressure means, so they actually know when to search and when not to search. And that's the beauty about it. You keep them very sensitive, so when you do start to use leg aids on them, they'll know to search through the rib cage because you've done so much of it with the belly rope.
Wonderful. All right. Thank you so much. We're going to leave it there for this week. We'll be back next week with more questions for you. Hope to see you then. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you, Jenny. Thank you, everybody.
The accurate insights and solutions that Mark Langley gives are at the forefront of emotive horsemanship globally. You can learn them for yourself through his supportive online membership. Check it out with a 7-day free trial. marklangley.com.au